Rob, thanks for coming on the podcast. We always start off with a brief introduction of you and your business, and then we'll take it from there.
Cool. So my name is Rob Smith. I'm the co-founder and chief commercial officer at Slick. We're a B2B booking and payments platform that is being specifically built for the hair, beauty, barber industry. So your typical SMB high street customer, broadly very underserved by technology, lots of legacy technology, pen and paper out there. And we're a business in a box solution that helps owners, increase profits, reduce admin, grow their business, and generally run their business. So all super accessible, kind of cloud-based technology, that's just very vertical specific.
Awesome. We'll get into what the business does now a little bit later. Do you just want to give us a quick whistle-stop tour of your career, and then sort of how the business came about and how you got into that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, prior to this, I've always been in what I would call commercial marketing. So not really brand marketing, but more kind of product ownership. Both at L'Oreal, and then secondly at Philips. Always in personal care, beauty. So I really started at L'Oreal in the professional division. That's where where sort of Slick really came about, because I worked with lots of UK salons, but wholesalers, the big national chains, and really probably saw firsthand some of the challenges they had. So I was responsible for marketing a number of professional brands in the UK, but then also driving a lot of kind of trade activation, national accounts, partnerships, wholesale agreements. And yeah, loved it. It was a great sort of marketing opportunity. L'Oreal, obviously an amazing place to to learn and cut your marketing teeth, so to speak. But actually wanted to move more into the consumer sort of sector. And so that's actually when I then sort of transitioned, still within hair and beauty, really, across to Philips, and took a sort of similar brand marketing role, but very much on the consumer side, for male grooming, female beauty. So working with the big retailers, the likes of John Lewis, Boots, Argos, but then also the e-com players as well. And yeah, responsible for full through the line kind of marketing plans, pricing, commercial, product launches. So again, it's a different experience, as I said, still within this of the hair, beauty, grooming space, but yeah, very, very different. And again, loved it. Great experience. And Philips is a very different beast to L'Oreal. You had a lot more kind of ownership of your product range, much more ability to actually create products that were needed for your market. So that was quite an interesting kind of time, being able to actually get more hands-on on the sort of the product side of the business and a bit more control there. Whereas with L'Oreal, it was a bit more, there's a pipeline of products of NPD that's coming down that's really sort of rolled out globally, and you get what you're given. Whereas with Philips, you had a lot more kind of control about identifying niches within your market and building a range. And I mean that range. It's not just individual products. It's creating a sort of a pattern that really works. And actually, would that be your low end, your mid end, very sort of targeted products. And yeah, great experience. But as I've got to a point where actually I think a lot of marketers, a lot of commercial people will find this. You get to a point in your career where you find that a lot of decisions that you really want to make, you're having to make within a large corporate framework. And there are quite rightly restrictions as to what you can do and what you can't do. And there is a corporate strategy that's been rolled out from Paris, from Amsterdam, wherever, and you're expected to toe the line. And rightly or wrongly, you might believe that there might be a different way to do it. And I think I got to a point where I wanted a bit more of that freedom. I had confidence in my abilities, so was looking to do something a bit different. And that's where actually I got introduced to my co-founder, Steph, who first set up Slick. And that gave me the opportunity to transition away from corporate into kind of tech and into the startup space, in an area that I obviously knew very well. But it gave me that opportunity to go and put my own, to paint my own canvas and to go and have a crack at it, and to make my own decisions and to be your own boss. And it's incredibly liberating. It's scary, but I think if you've got that, if you've got that passion, you've got that confidence, it's a great way of sort of testing your mettle, so to speak. So yeah, that was 7 years ago, and I've now been running Slick, and we've sort of scaled it pretty well since then. So yeah, a bit of a whistle stop tour.
Very good. Interesting then that Slick was already, or had maybe the foundations before you got into it. What did it look like when when you first came into the business?
Yeah, so Steph actually had her own idea, and having sort of spoken to, came from a very much from a personal pain point of her hairdresser not offering an online booking solution. Steph finding it hard to book in, and she was actually working on the Just Eat IPO at the time and was looking at going, well, hang on, technology is disrupting and changing a lot of other historic legacy high street industries. Why is my hair salon so behind the times? And she looked into it, and she came up with her own idea, which she pitched to a incubator called Founders Factory, which ultimately sort of rejected it, but said, actually, our corporate partner L'Oreal are looking at an alternative kind of concept. Would you be interested? And that's where we got sort of introduced through mutual friends. And so I joined where we had an MVP product, but we didn't really have any. We had two beta customers. And then from there, we sort of scaled it on. So it was very, very early days. We had a sort of a basic calendar functionality. And so I was able to join at an early stage where we're able to define the product roadmap and what we wanted. And I think that was some of the most exciting times where you're working so closely with customers. Your speed of execution is super high. You're rolling out new features all the time because you're working off a very low base. But also everything else, your go to market is a totally blank sheet of paper. And building out what you think your sales funnel should be, what your sales process should be, your first iterations of marketing, of partnerships. How are you going to, especially with this a legacy industry where typically people aren't that tech savvy. It's very different to a lot of kind of tech industries. It was a fascinating challenge. I always sort of think of it as if you're in sales or in marketing, it is one of the great challenges because it's a hell of a lot harder than selling shampoo to women because that's a category that already exists. It's a hell of a lot harder than selling shavers to men because again, there's a category that exists. Here we're talking about almost you having to create category awareness, category need. That really supersedes anything around brand.
Is it a coincidence that L'Oreal is what took the what would you call them? Would you call them investors?
Yeah, so L'Oreal actually wrote the check for our seed round. Yes.
Is it a coincidence that that's where you came from before?
I guess it is a bit of a coincidence, but I think it's one of the reasons that Steph and I got connected was my knowledge of, I suppose, the industry. And look, I could have worked at another big player and still had that same knowledge. But I think obviously my inside knowledge of how L'Oreal works, how the sales, the marketing functions work, what really drives them, was something that was obviously super useful, and one of the reasons why I guess Steph was keen for me to come on as a co-founder.
Okay, very good. Maybe let's go through, like you said, you've come from corporate background and then you're thrown into being a business owner, basically. What is it like for you in terms of, and when does it happen, of like needing to hire people and step out some of the work that you'd covered from the start? When do you start to look to hire team members, and what are those first hires?
I think you look to hire, you want to stretch yourself as far as you can. I think there's a risk that you stretch yourself too far. And I think that's probably what a lot of founders in my shoes would probably resonate with them. And I guess if you're a first time founder, it's a good piece of advice that I would really push home is, you want to really be able to do a lot of those roles before you hire because you know what you're looking for. But equally, you've then got to understand at what point you have capacity to do other things and where your capacity restricted, but also where your skill set is and where it isn't. And so, we hired fairly early on in things like sort of customer support, onboarding, because they were fairly kind of easy roles to scope out, I suppose. What we were looking for there, though, was actually probably a different skill set, especially around the customer support, because that we really wanted somebody in there who had the ability and the desire to listen to the customer and to feed stuff back. And that's why our product has been successful, is ultimately it feels like it's been built by a salon owner. And that's because we've ingested huge amounts of insight from our customers about how they want the system to perform, what they want, what they like, what they don't like. And so rather than just responding down to basic queries, you're answering that query, but you're also using that insight to fuel your product growth. From then on, really, I think the biggest learning there was you hire people that have the aptitude and the the hunger to be successful. I think where the most successful people that we've had are people that have curiosity, that are hardworking. They're prepared to put their ego to one side. They're prepared to listen to the customer, and to really lean into it. I think the people that have failed, so to speak, are the ones that come in with a preconceived idea about how things should be. They've got pedigree, let's say, of I can do X, Y, Z, and I've scaled to this industry, and they think that their skill set and their playbook can just be sort of mapped on to a certain industry. And it doesn't work like that. You've got to, each industry is difficult. You've got to listen to your customer. You've got to really understand their open pain points, the pain points they talk about, but also their hidden concerns and their hidden fears. And I think if you can do that and be adaptable, you'll be successful. But I think a lot of people who are potentially a bit more senior, a bit more, have been around a little longer, they struggle to do that, because they feel they have a sort of set way, because that's what served them well in the past. Whereas sort of the people that have got less of that experience, they're just much more open, in my experience. So yeah, I think it's knowing about when to hire, but also who to hire, and the sort of the type of talent you're looking to hire.
Yeah, so you're more looking at the type of person rather than the qualifications that they've got, and their adaptability is really important, especially for a product that doesn't really or didn't really exist before you came about. So there's not too much education on what works
Yeah,
and what doesn't work.
exactly. It's not like you're going from AWS to Azure and it's a similar platform. You're just selling it in a slightly different way, different pricing, whatever. You've really got to come in, understand the product. The product is hyper complex because it's doing so much. So you've got to have a pretty good kind of sort of technical IQ, and a desire to learn, but also you've got to be interested in the customer. And it's a hugely relationship based industry, which is important to lean into, but equally relationships alone won't get you there. And we've hired people from the industry who have got a black book of thousands of salons, thinking that would be sufficient to get us in the door, but it doesn't work like that. You've still got to understand you've got to understand their pain points, understand the product and how it's going to solve those pain points, to be successful. So actually we've adapted our go-to-market quite a lot over the years, and every time we've challenged ourselves, there's always that moment, that fear that we're sort of doing something not necessarily wrong, but something that might not work. But every time we've actually been proved right. It was the right thing to do. And I think it shows you how far you can kind of push things, and how far you can sort of stretch things. You've just got to be quite sort of brave about it.
Yeah, and you touched on it just then. The business development side is interesting for you because, and we'll go into this now, of an industry that's always done something, or the problem that you solved in one specific way, and they don't necessarily know that they don't know that a product like yours exists. So the education side of it is really important to say, like, this is why you should use us, and this is how we're going to make your life easier. How have you solved that so far? And then maybe go into like the issues of solving that as well that you've come up against.
Yeah, I think, I mean, if you were to take a very traditional sort of tech sales route, for SMB, you'd be thinking solely about running paid ads, SEO, driving to a landing page and trying to optimize your conversion journey from there on. I think if you then look at what the rest of our industry does in terms of the L'Oreals, the big kind of color houses, they are very much a in-person sales organization. It's very much based on relationship, because you're winning kind of high value business. Whereas actually our product, we don't want to be super expensive, because actually the vast majority of the UK kind of market is very much a small medium business. They can't support huge costs, and that's one of the big barriers of adoption historically from legacy tech. So we've got to try and balance the needs and the requirements to be quite approachable in our go-to-market, quite personal, because you've got high levels of dyslexia, people, it's a people industry. They trust people. But you've got to balance that with your cost of acquisition relative to your lifetime value. So we can't overinvest, but equally we can't underinvest. And so it's been a bit of trial and error around, do we do stuff in person? Do we do stuff online? And I think where we've netted out is a human approach is key. If you are solely reliant on an AI SDR and some paid ads and some landing pages, you're just not going to cut through. You'll engage this of the technically and the technologically advanced part of the audience, but that's a very small subset of your total addressable market. If you really want to get into those that are still using pen and paper, still using locally installed tech from 20 years ago, they're not on social. Their inbox is full of 30,000 unread emails. You've got to go old school and you've got to adapt your approach to them. And I can't imagine there's many out there, but we, as a tech company, we're still using direct mail because we know that that's going to get in front of very visual audience who that's still how they work. They're not shopping around, searching online. That's not what they're doing. And so it's all about adapting your go to market, your customers' behaviors, their preferences. And so where we're at is we have an SDR team, we have an AE team. Most of our stuff is done online, but we still have a regional team. So actually, look, if there is a high value account that really can only be cracked by going in person, we can still do that. And I think one thing that we find works really well is because yes, all these customers, these salons, these barbers are in competition with each other. There is still a local network. They went to college together. They shop in the same wholesaler together. So you get high levels of peer-to-peer referral. And so actually, if we can get a couple of customers in a certain town or village on board, very quickly you start to get sort of a network referral effect within that local area. And so again, knowing that you've got customer X in this area, and that's actually somebody that's really well respected in the industry, having that sort of that local approach as well works really well. And we've done quite a lot with somebody called the Local Data Company to map hotspots in the UK where we know there are successful kind of businesses, high concentrations of salons, barbers, relative to their sort of the economic prosperity of the area, which for us is a good sort of signal of, okay, we've got high concentration, so it's effective use of our time to go in there, but also we know that they're sort of long-standing successful businesses as opposed to actually in a more challenged area, and so that sort of strategy has actually paid off quite well.
Very good. We'll go into like what the platform does, and I guess the easiest way to start on this is what are these salons and owners experiencing? What are the pain points that they're experiencing that the platform fixes? Maybe a chance to go through some like success stories and case studies of how it's improved, and I guess like boosting revenue, and what are the main figures that you track, like how do you measure success for a salon?
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes back to every customer is slightly different, and you've got broadly what we do is we ultimately make salons more profitable. So whether that be increasing customer retention, increasing customer spend, increasing customer visits, equally being able to track costs, reduce costs, but also things like, I mean, one of the big problems within the industry is no-shows. Those salons, barbers are selling time. That's all they're selling. And if actually somebody doesn't turn up, it's very hard to resell that time. Because that time is been and gone. And so no-shows, late running of appointments has a massive knock-on effect within the industry. I mean, the average salon loses about $2,500 a month purely down to missed appointments. So if we can solve that, you're suddenly increasing their profitability quite substantially. But equally, some salons are, even though they might still use a paper book, they're actually they run a really good business. They're very efficient. They've got high demand. They've got a great brand, got really loyal clientele. So look, we can improve things by a couple of percentage points. But for those customers, actually, probably what we're really solving is the admin side of the business. a lot of people will go into the industry, not necessarily for a desire to make huge amounts of money. They're doing it because it's a creative industry. They have that passion for it. They signed up to delight customers, to deliver an amazing customer experience. They didn't sign up to be spending half their Sunday afternoon running payroll and wages. And that's where we can step in. And so it really comes back to, yeah, what is it that you want us to solve? Some customers will come to us with a problem of that actually, yeah, the salon is really struggling. Okay, so I need to really sort of dial into the marketing functionality, the online booking. Others will be actually they're doing quite well, but it's just the business is unmanageable and they need help managing the team. They need help with bookings. They need help with reporting, cash flow management, wages, payroll, stock management. And so it's more into the administrative side of the platform. And that's really what I guess what we do is it is a business in a box. If it happens in a salon, chances are we manage it. So whether that be gift vouchers, online booking, inventory control, analytics, marketing, client data, ensuring helping them comply with GDPR. There's so many things that we can kind of play on. But I think a lot of the customers that we speak to actually are fairly blind to their problems, and they just assume that that is just the life of the owner, and that I have to work 13-hour days. I have to spend my weekends doing payroll. I have to spend my Monday morning doing an inventory count. And actually, it's really asking the right questions to understand how they're spending their time. What are they happy with their business? What are they happy with? And what's not working with their business, to identify those challenges, and then really sort of start to talk to them about, look, here are some ideas about how we could help. But it's a lot of it is really trying to dispel the myth about software, and that a lot of them will feel that software is broadly expensive, clunky. They're thinking of a kind of a big 1999 Windows, big kind of tower computer with a big screen. There's always going to have problems. It's hugely expensive. It needs an IT manager to maintain it. And it's just trying to sort of prick that bubble of actually, look, it's something that can work off your iPad. A lot of them are using WhatsApp, they're using TikTok, using Instagram, and actually saying, look, B2B kind of business software shouldn't be any more complicated than WhatsApp. It shouldn't be any more complicated than TikTok. And that's effectively what we've built. But you've got to have that you've got to reposition it slightly. And actually, a lot of the forefathers of our industry have done us a bit of a disservice by creating sort of software that is very expensive. It is complicated. And we're just trying to sort of show that there's a different way of doing it.
Do you like, so it's not a sign up to a software and off you go. You sort of guide them on what they need and consult on that side of things, rather than just saying, here's a login, do what you want with it.
Yeah, I think one thing we learned very quickly was, and it's something I guess I'm hugely passionate about, is sort of customer support, and the ongoing support is vital. And I think if we had rode back from that and we'd sort of just had a sort of self sign up flow, yeah, we'd be able to strip out a load of costs from the business, but ultimately our churn would go through the roof. Because you've got it again, it's all about thinking about or the way I think about it is, look at your audience. Our audience, again, broadly they're technophobes. They're fantastic at coloring hair, they're fantastic at cutting hair, but the business management is not necessarily something they've had formal training in. And so if you're asking them to understand the difference between a deposit, which is a liability, and that bill, which has been checked out and is now revenue, well, that's actually starting to get into kind of accountancy practice here. So we've got to be able to help them understand that, because otherwise they're going to think the system's wrong, the system's broken. And so we invest heavily in our kind of customer support team. We also invest heavily in an account management team to help them get the most out of the system. Because if they're getting the most out of the system, that's going to build a healthy business. If they're building a healthy business and the software is delivering value for them, then they're not going to churn. They're going to continue to want to use the software. They're going to want to upgrade. They want to take more of our products, more of our features. They're going to want us to handle their payments for them. And I think a lot of tech businesses look at the human side, the support side, as it's cost. And the sooner I can replace that or get rid of that, the better. Whereas for us, it's actually, if you look at our Google reviews, every single one is 5-star. And the vast majority reference the human side of the business. Yeah, they say the product's great and it has some fantastic features, but it's the support that really makes people sticky. People are buying into a brand. And it's that human side. People buy from people. And so it's something that we have that as a real key differentiator from a lot of our competitors, because it really subserves us, and also it really helps you then, as I said earlier on, you're able to take all of that insight from your team and then translate that into insights on the product and what needs to be developed next. And that then fuels that flywheel of the product, which gets better and better because it's being fueled by insights that are being funneled back from your customers via a team. Whereas a lot otherwise, those frustrations, those insights could sort of stay locked away.
Nice. Do you have any do you have any success stories that you want to go through? And I had a look on your website, and you've got quite a few videos in there.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. I mean, there's so many. I mean, I think my favorite one is not. It's not actually one we I think have up. So it's a bit more of an anecdote. There's a customer up in Scotland, up on the Isle of Mull, who started off pen and paper. It took about 3 years to go online and take online bookings. I think she was 4 staff. She's now gone down to 3. She now earns more, or she was 5 to 3. She now earns more as a 3 person business than she did as a 5 person business, not by 5, 10, 20 quid, but by a magnitude of like 20, 30, 40, 50K. And so she's now earning more on a per month basis than some of the high-end London salons. And she puts it down to, unequivocally us. Like, she's I haven't really changed my branding, I haven't changed my skill set as a hairdresser. I've got a great team, but I mean, you look at her occupancy, she's fully booked every single week. There's not a slot in her diary. And this is a salon where people have to get a ferry to. Like, this isn't a salon on the King's Road where you've got some celebs traipsing in and out. But she's absolutely killing it because she's worked with us, she's used the tools available, but she's listened to kind of the support and the education that we offer, to learn how to really track the right KPIs, but then how, when she spots a problem, how to then go and fix them. And so she leans on us occasionally for some help and advice, but she's become the most amazing kind of self-serving businesswoman. But from a point where she was not using technology, the business was, it was okay, but she's now absolutely smashing it. And she's always sort of top of our leaderboard when we're sort of tracking kind of key metrics. And we're always sort of showing her off as somebody that's like, look, this is what you can achieve if you put your mind to it. And the best thing about it is this isn't some sort of 25-year-old millennial. This is, I think she's probably sort of 50. Like, she's really kind of, her mindset in terms of how she's wanted to grow and develop is just, it's outstanding. And that's why you get out of bed in the morning. Like, you sort of see those stories and you see how your platform has, in a small little way, helped somebody in their business. That's why you do it. Because that's a real sort of, I guess, success story.
What will be the main changes then for that revenue boost? I guess it's a mixture of a lot of things, but are there any specific things that you can pinpoint that were
it would
happening?
be a lot of it. I mean, running a salon it can be very complex, but it can be very simple, and it really boils down to making sure you're selling time. And so if you break down each kind of chair that you have in the salon into 45-minute slots, which is the typical kind of service length, how many of those slots are you filling? Because if you're not filling them, you're paying rent, you're paying rates, you're paying wages on that empty slot. That chair still has cost for you, even though it's empty. So the more you can be filling that, even with that be with a more middling kind of price point service, it doesn't have to be all kind of super high end. It's just occupancy. And then how do you then get those customers back? And so what we really kind of try to talk to our customers about is, yes, it's filling slots, filling those chairs, but then how do you get them back? So it's getting people to rebook, it's targeting them with marketing campaigns, but ultimately getting you to come back for a haircut in 20 weeks time. But that's very different to coming back in 5 weeks time. So if you can get your visit cycle more frequent, that's then each customer is then having 2 more visits a year. But that's another 100 quid spend per customer per year. But if you've got 2,500 clients, another 100 quid per customer per year, multiplied by 2,500, suddenly it all adds up. And so it's really kind of just yes, getting people to really think about those metrics and really own them. And I think a lot of people historically have thought that the industry almost worked by consumer demand. And actually, people would come in when they wanted to, or they would see a post, or they would see a campaign or something. And it's actually just really understanding, okay, well, how do I influence customer behavior? I can influence that at checkout. I can influence that by upselling them a retail product. I can influence that by sending them a prompt saying, look, you haven't been in for 6 weeks and you don't have a future appointment. Let's get you booked in. Slots are filling up. And it's using the kind of the digital tools that a lot of kind of big corporates have been using for years, but ultimately for SMBs, they've never really had access to, or if they had access, you needed an MBA in marketing and an advanced scholarship in MailChimp to learn how to use. It's just trying to make a lot of this kind of stuff that I guess we as in the tech industry might take for granted, getting these SMB owners to actually use and make accessible and coach them on how to use them.
Very good. We'll finish on what's next. Then we can go wherever you want with this. Might be good to stick with the industry since you're almost trying to change how the industry is done. But yeah, what's next over the next couple of years? Like I said, go wherever you want with that: business, industry, AI.
Yeah, I think the industry is quite interesting at the moment. There's a lot of there's a bit of a shift around of some salons are still moving from an employed model to more of a chair rental kind of self-employed gig economy model, so co-working spaces for want of a better word, which throws up some interesting opportunities, especially around the payments sector. So that's something that we're currently doing with our partner Stripe. So actually being able to take payments and then split them into different, according to the service provider. And to be able to build a system that actually supports both employed, but also that kind of more gig economy, co-working type space. And I think that's where a lot of our focus will be is payments, is for a lot of small businesses. They're typically either overpaying on payments, or they're having to spend a huge amount of time trying to reconcile things. And so they're trying to knit together multiple different providers they've got a Xero accounting system, they've got a booking system, they've got another payment provider, they've got a tipping provider. You're then having to pay an accountant hundreds of pounds a month to try and actually process all of that and reconcile your cash in versus your revenues. And that's really kind of where we see our place is we can do all of that. And that's actually seamlessly integrated. It's all under one platform. You're using one provider. So you're going to get economies of scale in terms of pricing, but you're going to get huge economies in terms of efficiency because everything talks to everything. And it's just that extension of really that business in a box. And so I think increasingly we'll spend a lot of time on payments. And that will then extend out into kind of capital lending, issuing potentially. So there's a lot of opportunity there. And obviously there's a lot of tailwinds there. You've also got the new tipping legislation that's come out last year. So that will continue to drive more kind of digital adoption. And then really, I think we will probably start to expand a little bit more in our industry focus. The moment we spend a lot of time on hair and barbering, we'll start to spend a bit more time on beauty. But I think for us, we want to make our product vertically specific. We're not trying to build a booking system for PTs or yoga studios. They're well served. And ultimately, I think our view is very much that people want to buy a product that is built for their industry. They don't want to buy a generic sort of round hole square peg type product that kind of works and it's maybe a bit cheaper. They just want something that works. And each industry has its own specificities. And so it's very hard to build a product that really caters at a deep level for every single industry. And I think as soon as you start to kind of go into different verticals, that starts to dilute your brand appeal. Of suddenly you're not a product that's for this industry, you're a generic product. And I think that's something we want to keep. We've got that heritage with L'Oreal as an investor that really kind of rings true to a lot of customers. And so I think anything we do that dilutes that would be harmful. So that's why we really want to keep very focused on this industry. And it's not a small industry. And there are 50 odd thousand hair and beauty businesses around the UK. And so, yeah, we don't need 100% of that to be a very, very successful business. So we don't need to kind of try and get too big for our boots and go out into lots of different industries. There's more than enough to play for right here, right now.
Very good. Do you have any sort of links back into something that we mentioned earlier. Do you have plans? Say you did get 30,000 of that 50,000 market share, and it's going to be a nice problem to have. Do you think about how you still keep that human side?
I think, as you said, it's a nice problem to have. I think our experience to date has been humans are sort of pretty integral to this industry. If you think about it from a hairdresser barber point of view, like that is what they love. You go to your typical hairdresser, they love to talk. It's the hands-on industry. And so look, it will change ever so slightly over the years, but I think we will always need that human first approach. Whether that comes to sales, whether that comes to upsell, whether that comes to retention. It's about making the unit economics work on our side of, okay, yeah, we could do it cheaper with AI. We could do it cheaper with self-serve, with tutorials, landing pages, videos, help articles. Where can we be efficient, but also where do we need humans? And I think bringing that human-centric approach to our marketing, to every facet of the business is still going to be really important.
Very good. We'll start to wrap up, but it's been really interesting because you think of a product that's going to that only makes lives easier. It's just going to sell like crazy, and you don't need to do any educating or anything like that. But then you think about that the target market is not really business savvy. They cut hair because that's what they like to do, and they like to talk to people. So it's interesting that even though it's helpful towards them, that you still have to do a lot of educating, and it's really hard to break through and get an entire industry to change their ways, basically.
Yep. I think the easiest way I always sort of summarize is you sort of say to a sales leader or a marketeer that you need to switch from Salesforce to HubSpot, and they sort of look at you with horror of, I can't move my entire database, all my automations, all that data. How am I going to migrate that? And that's what we're asking them to do. They've got all their appointments in all their clients in one place. We're asking them to move it. So there's logistical challenges that we cover with our onboarding team, but it's just that mindset blocker. And that's it's not unique to this industry at all. But it's trying to face into those concerns, address them head on, because that's often what they're worried about.
Yep. If people like the sound of it, or if there's any salon owners listening, where can they find you, and then where can they find the business?
So it would be getslick.com. And then if you search Get Slick, Rob Smith or Rob Smith on LinkedIn, I'm sure you'll find me.
Awesome. Good stuff. Rob, it's been great speaking, and thanks for coming on the podcast.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Tom. Cheers.